Alrighty, Matt back here again. We're covering the OE tier training, and now we're going to deep dive into the appointment and task settings features in the software. So in the OE tier, you have basic settings, and one of these settings is task, which is another fancy way of saying appointments or stuff you can click and add to your calendar. Okay. You also have in here email notifications, SMS notifications, templates, and SMS templates. And the reason why I mentioned that in tasks is because for each task there's associated with it text reminders and email reminders. And so whenever you're activating or deactivating tasks, you want to be sure to check off and make sure that the associated text message and email is also turned on and written the way you want. So we're going to talk about tasks here, and then a different video we're going to do deep dive on email. So to get to the tasks area, you simply come over to tasks, and then you see what all the default tasks are and how they're set up. Now, OsteoStrong centers, by and large, use this same task or / appointment format across the board. So it's already set up for you. The reason why we're showing it to you now is just to give you some understanding of how it's set up in case you want to add some different task type later, or just to understand really what's going on. And so essentially you've got an appointment, which is used to schedule recurring appointments. A first visit orientation is what you use at the center to schedule a first visit. And a second visit consultation, which is one you're going to use at the center when you schedule a second visit. Many OsteoStrong centers will schedule offer 2 free visits, do kind of the more overview, deep dive hands-on on the first one, and then more of a regular appointment on the second one. And they just have different closing percentages on the sales process and different appointments. So it's set up for you here. Then the other one is the online appointment. So that online appointment calendar, which you have, and depending on how much you use it, when an online appointment is scheduled, it uses this appointment type and appears as a different color on your calendar. Then finally you have notes that basically are green colored notes that you can add to the calendar. It's like a sticky note that you can put on your computer monitor to put a note to offer to your employees so that they see it and know what's going on. Now, these are all the default ones that come with the program, and so there are some in here that you just don't use that are kind of more fitness club oriented in the way they're done and really are replaced by this note field. So you can put a note, hey, I want you to follow up call with a member or a prospect, or schedule incoming calls on your calendar. None of the OsteoStrong centers use those, and they instead just use the note task and add that to the calendar, so they'll have an instruction to the team, hey team, call these people today, or something like that instead of those. And so to make that process cleaner and more streamlined at the club tier, we've deactivated those here. Now we'll take a look at one of these because, as I mentioned in the first video, the software program is super robust. It does so much stuff that it really is mind-blowing how much the software actually does. And as you dig into all the different layers of that onion, it actually gets to be fairly complicated in the setup part of it. And so I always invite people, hey, look, if you're getting into wanting to mess around with some custom task types or different types of contracts that you might be selling, I always say, hey, just call support. We do this every day. You're not doing it every day, and so it's kind of important that you touch base with us just to make sure you're doing it right. We're here for you, happy to help. And so basically, here's the high-level overview of the different functions of the task. You have the task name, and that's important. It'll appear in different aspects of the program, in text reminders or email reminders. That task name appears, and so you kind of want to name it something that makes sense for what the members see. The color is a color on the appointment. This note here is really just a note to you to let you know that what that appointment's doing. Okay. When you have the different columns on your calendar staked out, this tells you what column you're allowed to assign to schedule this. So you can schedule the recurring appointment in the recurring visit column. You're not going to be scheduling under first visit or Team OsteoStrong, then that setting is here. So if you decide, hey, maybe one of these other things I want to schedule over in the different column, then I'm going to schedule it over in that different column. The duration, that's pretty obvious. That's the default duration for the appointment. Active just means it's available to be selected. Show on portal means it's available on the portal, and then we just started rolling this out in the OsteoStrong centers, and there's some other functionality. I'm going to show you about that here in a second about that. But we're going to uncheck that, and I'll explain it to you in more detail when we go through the member portal video. But basically, when member portal is activated, and for all OsteoStrong centers going forward, it is turned on, members can log in to the member portal and reschedule their recurring appointments. This doesn't need to be checked for that to happen. All the recurring appointments that you schedule for them on your calendar are available to them to edit without them being able to add their own recurring appointments. So we don't want them to add any of their own. We only want them to reschedule what's already set up for them. And so that's why we don't need to check that. Available to public means that on your public calendar, a just random public can come up and schedule these appointments. We don't want that. There's a separate appointment for online appointment, for that first-time appointment that will appear on your calendar over here, but we don't want this on there, which is why that's not available to public. Requiring prior notice activates when a public calendar appointment is there, so you don't want them scheduling it same day, and we'll get into that when we look at that appointment type. Another key component of this is one you want to pay attention to is this setting here. You have the appointment time will come and go on your calendar, and the system will do different things when that happens depending on this setting right here. And so you can do nothing when that appointment time comes and goes on your calendar. And if you do nothing, then that appointment will automatically default to having been missed or no-show. Okay, that's do nothing. If you check this option, autocomplete if a member scans in, that means the appointment will be marked automatically checked off when that member scans in. Really handy for your recurring appointments. They have their Spectrum tag, which also works to scan in at the front desk. And so now you're not having to go in and check off the appointment as having been completed. It just checks it off automatically. Now, when a person forgets their tag, then you'll check off their appointment manually at the club tier, and that's covered in that club tier video on how to schedule appointments. Okay. And then the other one is autocomplete at the time of the appointment. Sometimes you just want it checked off automatically when the time goes by. We recommend not using that setting. This setting is critical for the management of no-shows on your calendar. So when an appointment time goes by and a person does not scan in or you don't manually check them off as attending, that appointment turns red on your calendar. So at the end of the day, you're going to want to look and see, well, which appointments do I have are red? Those are my no-shows. It's utterly critical for you to manage your no-shows because if people are in the habit of not showing up, they're not getting results, and they're not going to stay a member longer. So when you're in the throes of your grand opening and your grand opening week, if you don't develop these habits now, then it'll be a problem later as your membership duration for your members is not as long as you want because they're not showing up. But don't worry, we're going to take care of you by flagging them in red to let you know you need to follow up with them. The last setting here is concurrent sessions. So you can schedule appointments to occur at the same time, and this defaults to 4 at a time. And so generally, because the Spectrum is set up for 4 pieces of equipment, most clubs will set that to 3 or 4. So at the club tier, you can schedule 3 or 4 at that time. And that's the high level of what all's going on with the appointments. Okay, now each one of these has different settings, and so we'll take a look at first visit, and some different features on this one are the duration, the color. It's only checked for the first visit column. There's only one, actually we want to put more than that. When you schedule a first visit, you're the person, the club or your employees are the ones who are scheduling this first visit. It's not available to the public. So you're going to know your staffing levels, and you're going to know your employees ability to handle multiple first-time appointments at the same time. And so I'm setting this limit for you right now. Hey, you can do it if you want, just make sure you know what you're doing. You're bringing in multiple people at the same time for a first-time appointment, which works out usually pretty good, but if you don't feel like that's something you want your team doing, then you can change it. I have it capped at 3 here, so you can tweak that if you want to schedule more or less. It's set for an hour. It's active. Now note, this is set for autocomplete if member scans in, but really just going to put that at none because a first visit member is not going to have a key tag at that point. Nothing's going to be assigned to them. They're not going to be a member at the center. And so for all first-time appointments, you have to manually check them off. And you'll quickly get in the habit of doing that because when the appointment time goes by, it'll turn red. You're going to, oh, hey, yeah, no, I remember Betty came in. I just forgot to check her off. And that's what you do. And so that's the first time appointment. Second visit is set up like the first visit, just a shorter duration. The online appointment, the one thing that's different here is it's available to the public, which means on this public-facing calendar, this first visit tour, online tour appointment, see the name of it appears here, is the only appointment that the public can schedule from your online calendar. Okay. And that's what that checkbox here does. It makes that available. And so you want to make sure none of your other appointments are made available to the public just so it doesn't confuse the process of getting that first-time appointment. That whole thing is designed to capture the first-time appointment. That's what you want to do. That's everything for an OsteoStrong Center is getting those first-time appointments in the door, and that's why it's limited to that. So this one, you know, it's scheduling limit. This is actually how many first-time appointments can be scheduled from the same URL, so you don't have Russian bots spamming you or that kind of stuff. That's just a protection on there. And then the prior notice they can only do on if they can only do a day out, so they're not scheduling the same day. Here we've limited these appointments to only 1 per day because we don't want the public to come in and schedule multiple appointments at the same time. They're not going to know your schedule, and so that's why it's limited to just 1. And these appear in yellow on your calendar, so you'll know, hey, I got an appointment that came in from my public calendar. It's bright yellow. And then we click Save. So that one's set up and good to go. These others are turned off. Okay. Now, associated with all of these default appointments are emails, and we're going to cover how we set those up, but just know that that's what's set up there. And the other thing about tasks to be aware of that's extremely important is there are different kinds of tasks. Okay, so these are all the default tasks that are set up. You can add a custom task. You can think, yeah, Matt, I appreciate what you did. I know that's what all the other OsteoStrong centers doing, but I want to go make my own task. Fine, more power to you. We allow you to do that. So you can go create a task name. You can make it whatever color you want. You can set whatever duration you want. You make it active. All the other settings that were explained earlier in this video are available to you here. And first, recurring, that's to whom you assign that particular task, and you click Save. Here's the big caveat on this. When you create a custom task, it creates a custom task email and text message that will send when it's scheduled. Now, you can create a custom task that'll be just maybe a note that you're writing to your employees, or I want to block out lunch on my calendar. Now, I would recommend you just use the note for that rather than creating a bunch of custom tasks. But you can do all that and just not have emails or text messages go out for that. Or you might come up with some other kind of task where you want email and text messages to go out to your members. Just know that they're automatically created and they're automatically set to turned off. Okay? And so if you want to turn those on, you have to go into email notifications, and then you'll see there's custom task emails that sit down here. And there'll be whatever the name of your custom task will appear here, and you need to go in and edit it as some kind of developer speak, poorly written language with no data fields in it, and just edit that to read what you want for that. Okay, we have just done a deep dive on our tasks. That's really it for task and task management. The thing for an OsteoStrong Center, they're all set up and good to go. The only thing you're really going to want to do with those later is probably tweak the time and duration of it, maybe the amount you could schedule at the same time. But generally, you're really not going to have to do anything with those. Any questions? Contact support. We're here for you. Always happy to help.